Over the holiday season this year, I, like most folks with a love of a fat red man and his 12 bullying reindeer, filled my body with food and my brain with Christmas specials. Friends, Community, Charlie Brown, Doctor Who, The Muppets, The Other Muppets, Home Alone, Oops All Fascists, Home Alone the bad one, Home Alone the worst one, Home Alone woke exclamation point, question mark in Terabang, and perhaps a king above them all, Merry Christmas, Mr. Bean. For those of you unaware, Mr. Bean is a British comedy show starring Rowan Atkinson as the titular Mr. Bean. It had 15 episodes between January 1990 and December 1995. We Brits call this a saggy run of television. Mr. Bean also appeared in 2 feature films, 5 comic relief charity specials, some deleted scenes in YouTube specials, and another thing I don't want to talk about today. Mr. Bean has delighted people all over the world with his mostly silent brand of comedy, getting himself into socially awkward scrapes and situations and finding unique ways to escape them or, more likely, make them worse with a certain childlike aplomb. However, whilst doing my yearly rewatch of, in my opinion, the high watermark of the Mr. Bean expanded universe, Merry Christmas, Mr. Bean, I discovered something sinister. Mr. Bean, this seemingly charming and whimsical character who has delighted millions across the world, is in fact a disgusting criminal. In my most recent rewatch, I noticed that the defendant, Mr. Bean, had a certain callous disregard for the people around him, those close to him, seemingly random bystanders, and perhaps most alarmingly of all, the common communal good. The laws that bind our society together and are never ever tools of an oppressive ruling class to protect their own wealth and power from the working classes with a specific focus on targeting minorities. I love the law. I am the law. And in my capacity as the law, I realised my investigations had to go deeper. I had to watch the roughly 10 hours of Mr. Bean content available, and I had to bring that man to justice. And it was not a waste of 10 hours of my life. Now I know what you're thinking. Isn't Mr. Bean kinda, sort of... Doesn't he... Look, this is a fair concern. Mr. Bean is certainly an odd character, one whose various quibbles and actions outside the social norm could be attributed to neurodiversity. And whilst I could talk about how the creators all seem to make it clear that he isn't, in fact, we have some explanations that may explain Mr. Bean's beanness. It must be said, it doesn't matter. This is a YouTube court of law, and the question is Mr. Bean unfit to plead? To be ruled unfit to plead in an English court of law requires the accused to be unable to comprehend the course of the proceedings of the trial, to know that they may challenge any jurors to whom they may object, to comprehend the evidence, and to give proper instruction to their legal representative. I do not believe, in my heart, that Mr. Bean meets these criteria. We see over the course of the Mr. Bean television series that Mr. Bean is able to attend and understand classes and take exams, to communicate his needs and wants without issue, and, perhaps most importantly, is fully aware he can challenge anyone at any time. There's also the other argument that Mr. Bean isn't human at all, that Mr. Bean is in fact an alien. Mr. Bean is dropped from the sky from a beam of white light, clearly mimicking an alien encounter in the opening of literally every episode. He acts the way he does because he does not understand our strange human cultures and customs. This is even made canon in Mr. Bean, the animated series episode Double Trouble, the finale of season 3. I've never liked this for a few reasons, personally. 1, the animated show is trash and not canon, and I do not have time to watch it. I'm an adult, a tired adult. 2, it's just kind of lazy. Like, oh, a slightly weird guy can't exist, he has to be an alien. That's the only thing that makes sense. He drives and socializes and has a long-term job and goes on holidays and is just a guy who's a bit childish, a bit mean, and a bit strange. It's fine, it happens. And he deserves to be tried for his crimes like any other human being and citizen of this great, awful country full of bastards we live in. I would also just like to say here, I'm not a lawyer, a judge, a solicitor, or a barrister. I have done my best to research the law and have fact-checked as much as possible, but I cannot promise that this is all legally sound, and it definitely does not constitute legal advice. My main resources have been the Sentencing Council and legislation.gov.uk. I'm just a girl with a laptop and a yearning for justice. Where I can, I have tried to take into account the laws of the time, given the show was created predominantly in the 90s, but I couldn't always do this. In short, I've tried my best. I can't promise this will all be perfect, Please, if I've got anything wrong, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know, and I'd love to make sure that I'm really nailing Mr. Bean for what he has done against the law. With all that said, my name's MJaded, and this is The Many Crimes of Mr. Bean. I'm at the scene of one of Mr. Bean's most shocking crime sprees. If you want to find out which one, keep watching. Your clue is there used to be a bus stop here. And while I have you, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe so I can get that sweet, sweet engagement. Mr. Bean, first name unknown, has committed many minor infractions over the years that, whilst not really crimes that would require a prison sentence, I do believe are a solid groundwork for Mr. Bean's lack of regard for the law. In episode 13, Goodnight Mr. Bean purposely breaks a sundial inside Windsor Castle so he can better place his camera for pictures. Whilst accidents do happen, this is a malicious and targeted breaking which would at least be a civil dispute. The fact that this happens in Windsor Castle and is therefore property of the Queen actually doesn't matter to me that much. Sure, this is Crown property, but I can find no reason as to treat this any differently than any other property, where this would fall under the Criminal Damage Act of 1971. Where it gets interesting is if the damage is worth less than £5,000, there is a maximum of a level 4 fine up to £2.5 grand, and or 3 months imprisonment. Whilst this looks like a pretty simple fix, one does have to ask, is there an incentive for the court, as this involves the Queen's property, to say that this is more than £5,000 worth of damage? Maybe that's a 500-year-old sundial and fixing it would actually require a specialist stonemason. This would mean it could lead to up to 10 years jail time. I'm not suggesting the court think one way or the other, I'm just saying, look at the Queen. Don't we all love her? Don't we all just love thinking about how she lived on colonial wealth? Wait, forget that. We all love her. She has dogs. Also, as an aside, in this episode, we see Mr. Bean owns a pistol he uses to shoot out his light every night. At first, I thought this was a crime, but it is an air pistol, which it's legal to own without a license, and the pellet doesn't seem to leave his property, so, it's fine, I guess. In episode 14, Hair by Mr. Bean of London, Mr. Bean pretends to be a barber. Whilst this would originally not fall under the category of fraud, because it was accidental and did not involve the theft of property, Mr. Bean did take payment for his barbering. This would make it fraud under the 1968 Theft Act, Section 15. As this was a minor breach of trust with only a small amount of money taken, I imagine this would be filed under medium culpability but low harm, which would put it in the range of a band C fine, which is roughly 150% of the criminal's weekly income. This, under the current fining system, is defined by the UK Sentencing Council, as I couldn't find anything that matched up to that in the 1990s terms. Average weekly earnings in the UK were around £225 a week, so let's say £382.50. In the same episode, Mr. Bean rides a train without a ticket, which would be either a £10 fine or the price of the journey, whichever's greater. I'm just going to say £10 for ease on this one, and would just like to say you would be so goddamn lucky nowadays. A £10 train ticket these days usually means they kick you off the train in the middle of nowhere like Tracy Beaker the movie. So illegal, so not the point. In the bonus segment The Library from the 1991 The Amazing Adventures of Mr. Bean VHS tape, Mr. Bean destroys a rare book due to what can only be described as reckless disregard for the library's property in a sort of humorous series of events, where each time he tries to make the situation better, he only makes it worse. It's highly amusing. More importantly, it brings us back to the Criminal Damage Act, though theoretically the library may charge its own restoration fee, or say Mr. Bean refuses to pay the fee, as we see him trying to pass off the destruction to another patron, which, may I say, is a dick move. If the restoration is less than £5 grand, which from what I found it would be, that's £2,500 on the counter. And can I just say, not to be rude, but why the hell is Mr. Bean in this fancy library? I know he wants to copy one of the pictures with a crayon or whatever, but why would anyone look at Mr. Bean and decide, of their own free will, to provide him with an original copy of an old, rare book? They usually copy the pages for you and give you them for a reason. I think we will find this is just as much negligence on the part of the stuffy librarian as it is the fault of Mr. Bean. And just one more act of criminal damage to wrap us up. In episode 9, Mr. Bean in room 426, Mr. Bean first drills a nail into a wall to hang up a painting, which by itself we would assume to be minor enough to be handled by the hotel. But remember I said first. After that, he then knocks a wall down so he can access the shared bathroom, which, Let's be clear, would render that bathroom useless to anyone not in that room, because you'd have a Mr. Bean watching you take a bath, and then renders that room useless because people will be watching you sleep while they shower. A repair wouldn't be too expensive, but we also have to factor in lost income from the time the room and bathroom were unusable. Let's just smack another $2,500 on there and move on. And whilst I can't prove these crimes, I just want to say I don't believe Mr. Bean got an American Express card in a legal way, so I suspect fraud. And whilst we have no proof it caused harm, Mr. Bean did pick up a phone in the police station and proceed to not help the person calling in Mr. Bean's Red Nose Day, which could be endangerment depending on what the call was about. Also, I don't think there was intention behind the building of the cracker bomb in Merry Christmas, Mr. Bean, so I don't think we can really prosecute Mr. Bean for that one, but it's iffy. There is no area of crime in which Mr. Bean is a more prolific partaker than that of roadway crime. To call Mr. Bean a reckless driver would actually be an understatement in my eyes. Mr. Bean is an aggressive driver, a man who drives with intention to cause harm. There is no other way to explain the choices this man makes on the road, especially when it comes to his vendetta against the so-called Blue Reliant. I counted 9 counts of reckless driving in the Mr. Bean canon, which are being shown here. Under the Road Traffic Act of 1960, these are defined as being dangerous to the public and would each result in a fine of up to £100. Let's say maximum fine each, £900. This isn't including Mr. Bean's actions towards the Blue Robin Reliant could be considered harassment. I would like to highlight a couple of these reckless driving offences as particularly egregious. One is episode 5, The Trouble with Mr. Bean. Though I would argue it should be called The Legal Troubles with Mr. Bean. Thank you very much. In the episode, Mr. Bean is late for a dentist appointment after oversleeping. In his rush, Mr. Bean decides the best thing to do is drive to this appointment whilst getting ready. This includes putting his shirt on over his head, causing him to be visually impaired for several seconds, putting a brick on the gas pedal to keep speed with no control over the brake or clutch, using his teeth to hold the wheel whilst he prepares toothpaste, and driving while sat in the back seat of the car, using his feet to drive. Whilst we all appreciate the chance to see Mr. Bean's feet, what is less palatable is the danger this poses to those around him. I would also like to say that, whilst I have no proof of this, Mr. Bean accomplishes his changing whilst driving technique with a practiced ease that would imply to me this is not the first time he has done it. Maybe not even the 10th. The other major case of reckless driving we see in the show is in episode 9, Do It Yourself, Mr. Bean. What he was doing was clearly endangering lives with this act as Mr. Bean drove his car from a chair strapped to its roof. This is a man our society raises up as a hero, operating a motor vehicle on residential streets with, as clearly shown here, no ability to actually work the brake of his car with any level of consistency. Whilst his vision is not impaired here, he has once again sacrificed his ability to safely operate his vehicle. What if a child wandered into the street? What if a car suddenly pulled out? The fact that Mr. Bean's landing was in a van containing mattresses and only seems to have caused a comedic puff of feathers makes what is flagrant disregard for the people around him into a harmless gag. And perhaps worst of all, he did it again. Unlike the changing whilst driving, where I have no proof of repeat behaviour, we see it clear as day here for the 25th anniversary of Mr. Bean YouTube special. He chose to complete one of his most dangerous crimes again. This time in the centre of London, an incredibly busy metropolis. I will take the time here also to include the 3 times we see Mr. Bean pushing cars out of parking spaces, which is likely to damage the other vehicles. Of course, he leaves no insurance information. This feels more like a civil matter, so I don't believe there is a specific penalty for this. Mr. Bean's insurance would just be very expensive. Also, a special mention to his actions in episode 1, Mr. Bean, where the titular Bean pushes the Blue Robin Reliant into a roadway, which is obstructing a road as defined in section 137 of the Highways Act of 1980. I can't find an exact measure on the fine for this one. One source says it's most likely £200 for a first-time offender, so I guess we can go with that. I would also like to highlight Mr. Bean getting out of his car and pushing it to seemingly circumvent a red light. To be clear, this is still illegal. Pushing your car still technically counts as operating it. This is another £100 charge. There are also 2 cases of Mr. Bean placing loads on top of his car which are not properly secured and stretch beyond the limits of his car, which we'll say is another £200 in fines, because I don't have the exact measurements and a lot of these laws are a bit confusing. And as I stated previously, I don't have a legal degree or patience, and I'm sleepy. I think I've presented a pretty solid argument here for why Mr. Bean's license should be revoked and he should be forced to take the bus everywhere for the rest of his life. Except, I don't think he'll actually be riding the bus, because part 2 is going to show why he shouldn't be free at all. We can all agree, I believe, that I have shown a streak of recklessness in Mr. Bean, but what I've started to lay the foundation for here and aim to expand upon is his cruelty and aggression. Let's start slow, however, with Mr. Bean's complete lack of respect for property. In episode 2, The Return of Mr. Bean is out shopping. He tests out a few telephones, finds none to his liking, and instead steals the store's actual working phone. To be clear, this is stealing. That telephone is not for sale. It is property of the store. You can't just walk into a shop, pick up a display table and purchase it, and the same goes for telephones. We'll say this is another band C fine again, so £382.50. In episode 6 of Mr. Bean steals a stamp from a letter. I think this would be counted as interfering with the mail, which carries a 6-month prison sentence under the Postal Services Act of 2000. You only get to mess with Royal Mail if you're the British government, I guess. Mr. Bean also gets trapped inside the postbox, which I don't think is a crime necessarily, but does make a good holding place until the police arrive. You just stay there, mate. In Season 1, Episode 14, Mr. Bean takes part in a dog show with his teddy. And, obviously people are humouring him. He does not win, surprisingly, and decides to steal the top prize, a jar of honey, during the chaos caused by an unrelated, violent dog attack. This is just stealing, to be clear. He did not win that prize. That prize belongs to whoever won first place. Obviously. Another band C. In Season 1, Episode 7, Merry Christmas, Mr. Bean, he actually commits 2 acts of theft, which are actually quite shocking. The first is during a brass band playing some Christmas standards for the enjoyment of local shoppers. A classic British activity. Another classic British activity, especially in London, pickpocketing. A child, I assume some sort of Cockney street urchin with a heart of gold, is pickpocketing people, stealing jewellery and wallets. Mr. Bean sees this and forces the child, who was probably going to use the proceeds from pickpocketing these rich fat cats to support his commune of lovable orphans with hearts of gold, forces this child to hand over his stolen goods, at which point he donates it all to the brass band, who are playing for charity. This seems like a sort of vaguely altruistic gesture until you realise that Mr. Bean has committed the crime of knowingly handling stolen goods. He witnesses the theft, so is aware that the goods are stolen. He then disposes of the goods in a way that makes them entirely untraceable, which is clearly disposal of goods. This is punishable by up to 14 years imprisonment. Then Mr. Bean just steals a Christmas tree. Just straight up steals a Christmas tree. There is no wiggle room here, no way you can say there was a positive aim. He takes a giant Christmas tree that was prominently displayed in a town centre, dangerously affixes it to the roof of his car, drives it home, cuts away 90% of it, and just dumps it onto the side of the road, I think? Or maybe into his neighbour's garden? We're going to ignore that for today because I don't have exactly where the tree went, and instead focus on the fact that this means he could be imprisoned for a further 7 years. And I just want to say on a personal note that that tree was for the enjoyment of the public. Mr. Bean stealing it callously and selfishly for his own enjoyment and depriving the public of joy is a crime that cannot be quantified. It's a Grinch-esque manoeuvre. And while stealing things isn't great, I think we can all agree that, sometimes it's punk and cool. Be gay, do crime, queen. And, if the dog show was willing to give Mr. Bean the second prize for bringing a teddy bear, maybe they deserve to have their honey stolen. And that store shouldn't have put a working telephone next to all those for sale ones. That is confusing. Maybe this Mr. Bean isn't so bad, Unless you read the title of this section and know that I'm just getting started. First of all, let's take a brief detour into poisonings. Yes, ings, as in multiple. In episode 9, Do It Yourself, Mr. Bean hosts a New Year's Eve party with these 2 boring men in suits. I am fascinated by this. Who are these men? Are they Mr. Bean's friends, work colleagues? Where did they come from? Where did they go? They clearly don't like Mr. Bean because they don't want to be there and change the clock to trick him into thinking it's midnight. And they didn't send him Christmas cards in Merry Christmas, Mr. Bean. Who are you, bland suit man who eventually goes to a cool New Year's party and gets lots of kisses? How do you know this criminal? Speaking of criminal, let's talk about the actual crime Mr. Bean commits here, which is when he realizes he is out of twiglets, feeding these two suit men actual twigs covered in Marmite. This definitely falls under Section 24 of the Offences Against the Person Act, which states, whoever shall unlawfully and maliciously administer to or cause to be administered to or taken by any other person any poison or other destructive or noxious thing with intent to injure, aggrieve, or annoy such person shall be guilty of a misdemeanour. Whilst there could be an argument here that there was an intent to injure, aggrieve, or annoy, I think that would be ignoring that he knowingly and without care fed them twigs which are actually dangerous. They can splinter, meaning you could get splinters in your gums, in your intestines, and they haven't been washed. Who knows what infections could be received from this seemingly humorous attempt to extend a New Year's Eve party. This crime is category 3, which is basically no factors indicating raised harm or culpability, and has a sentencing range of 1 to 5 years. I think 1 year would probably be the aim here, as not much damage seems to have been caused, and that this is a first-time offence. Also, just want to add in here that later on in the episode, Mr. Bean sets off a paint bomb with a firework, which I think, technically speaking, would be endangering property because, it's an exploding metal tube, which is sort of like a grenade if you think about it. But because no one gets hurt, just the kisses guy gets covered in paint, I don't think he could be tried for it. And in episode 5, after doing all that stuff with the dangerous driving and the spitting on a builder's bottom, Mr. Bean arrives at the dentist and injects his leg with local anaesthetic, causing him to collapse. Once again, we get into a lot of questions of intent here in terms of, was Mr. Bean malicious in what seems to be an aggressive but mostly accidental reaction to the dentist causing him pain? It did seem in that moment that he was trying to stab the dentist with the local anaesthetic. I would go further this time as well, as injecting him caused provable harm. He falls to the ground and is crushed by whatever this is. A dental pillar? A tooth monolith? Whatever it is, it looks heavy and it does hit him hard enough that he doesn't get back up. And Mr. Bean was not holding that needle outwards and accidentally pricking the dentist. He thrust it all the way in and injected. 5 years seems frankly minor for this crime, so I would say it's actually a Section 23 because of that whole grievous bodily harm of having a medical totem dropped on him, which can be up to 10 years in prison. Here seems like a good place to talk about the absolute string of crimes Mr. Bean commits in episode 10, Mind the Baby Mr. Bean. In this episode, perhaps unsurprisingly, Mr. Bean has to mind a baby. If by minding a baby you mean takes the baby from its mother by accidentally hitting its pram with his car and dragging the baby away so he has to take care of the baby, or else it will be left on the street to be raised by wild dogs. If that's what you mean by minding the baby, Miss Bean minds a baby in this episode. I don't think I can swing this as kidnapping from the point of view of someone who is watching the show, though I would argue in universe he could easily be convicted of it. Because I accidentally hooked the baby's pram to my car and dragged it away from its mother doesn't sound like a truthful excuse. But I'm going to be generous here. He isn't trying to kidnap the baby by force or coercion. Accidents happen. And Mr. Bean does take the baby into his care. I think we can all agree on that, which is why it would be bad if he left the baby in a post-van ride whilst he went on a roller coaster. As a completely random example. Mr. Bean left a baby that was in his care in a post-van ride whilst he went on a roller coaster. I don't really know what else I can say here. How is leaving a literal baby, which cannot move itself or talk or do anything but eat and shit, to fend for itself in the middle of a street, not a crime? That is endangerment, plain and simple. Even accepting that Mr. Bean isn't kidnapping the child and he is not dangerous to the child, which, there is a history of violent crime, I will say. Even accepting that, to leave that baby with no one looking after it whilst he gallivants around riding roller coasters and playing arcade machines is definitely wrong. And hell, whilst we're here, can I just say that surely the first thing you do is take the baby back and just say the pram rolled away without her noticing, which is sort of half true. Even if you can't find the mother, you just take the child to the local police or the fair office and you just say, I found this baby, see ya, I'm going to go play 2P machines. You don't take the baby into your care and then abandon it in a far worse situation, instantly. This would probably be charged at the lowest level under the Children and Young Persons Act of 1933, which would be a low-level community order, aka 40 to 80 hours of unpaid work. In the process of the baby care thing, Mr. Bean also steals the lead of a dog to do something with the baby. I'm beyond questions at this point. Doing so, he releases the dog, which we very quickly see is dangerous because we hear the screams of women and children, the most important screams.
Oh my god!
This could be considered theft because a dog is considered the property of its owner, and releasing the dog is depriving the owner of its dog because, hey, it's on the loose. Also, in doing so, I would say, much like the not kidnapping but baby taking, Mr. Bean becomes the person in control of the dog and would therefore be liable for allowing the dog to be dangerously out of control and to seemingly attack people as defined in the Dangerous Dogs Act of 1991. This would be classed as an aggravated offence if the dog injures a person, which we will assume it did because of the screaming. Maximum sentence is 5 years, and I am going to push for that. I just want to point out, dog lovers, cover your ears, that this could lead to the destruction of the dog. You can have them cover your ears now. It could lead to the dog having to go to a farm where it can run free with all the other dogs, which is messed up and like horrible exposure of the relationship between humans and other animals. But anyway, just for the 1-2 punch of crimes involving animals, Mr. Bean also holds a live fish in his mouth for several minutes and swallows it at one point before, I guess, regurgitating it in this episode. This is definitely animal cruelty, right? Even worse, this was like a trend in 2014 and someone actually did this in real life and filmed it as part of the Neck Nomination Challenge. Remember challenges? The internet was a mistake. He was charged £200 and banned from owning pets for a year. Let's chuck that on for Mr. Bean. Speaking of Mr. Bean's recklessness and negligence, in episode 6, Mr. Bean encounters a man who appears to have gone into cardiac arrest. His response is to stomp on the man in an attempt to do CPR, followed by refusing to properly do mouth-to-mouth because I guess Mr. Bean is very much no homo. Look, he's trying to push life-giving oxygen into this man's lungs via a rolled-up magazine. He then attempts to defibrillate the man with jumper cables from a lamppost. All of this would, I guess, be covered under Good Samaritan laws. He is trying to help, he's just bad at it. Like, really, truly awful at it. But incompetence isn't a crime. If it was, most of the human race would be in jail, and the world would just be boring, competent people fixing things and eating boiled chicken and rice, no seasoning. But what is probably a crime is draining the battery of an ambulance, causing it to stop working and impeding these paramedics' attempts to save this man's life. This man, Mr. Bean, wouldn't even kiss to save due to his masculine pride, may I add. Whilst post-2006 this would have been covered by the Emergency Workers Obstruction Act of 2006, before that I don't think this would have been directly covered under the law. However, I think we could argue this would fall under our old friend, the Criminal Damage Act of 1971. Draining a vehicle's battery so it no longer functions would be classed as criminal damage. Furthermore, this feels like it is reckless as to whether the life of another would be endangered, because it is an ambulance, and taking one out of action, even if it's not directly helping someone in the moment, which it is still meaning there is an ambulance which could save someone's life not in play. So under sentencing guidelines, I would say this is a B culpability as it was just reckless, not intentional, but a category 1 in that you put cardiac arrest patient's life seriously at risk, with a sentencing guideline of up to 10 years. Now moving on to the main event of this section, just so much assault. Let's start with episode 1. Mr. Bean goes to a church sermon, meaning he is seemingly religious, which doesn't make sense for a person who so flagrantly flaunts the laws of God and man. During the church service, Mr. Bean falls asleep, which as far as I'm aware is not illegal, though it is sort of rude. Fair, but rude. When he falls asleep, however, he falls into the crotch of the man next to him. Just an awful situation, but not a targeted attack. Until he wakes up and strangles the man and hits him. I understand that in the context of the moment Miss Bean was waking up and is shocked and confused, but that does not justify his actions. Individually, these are small acts, but together they create a scenario where the gentleman next to Mr. Bean should rightly fear for his safety. It feels targeted, as if Mr. Bean felt he was being judged and lashed out. This would be classed under common assault, which usually carries a charge up to 6 months. Whilst for a religiously motivated assault this can be brought up to 2 years, I don't think this could be argued despite it taking place in a church. Next, let's look at episode 4, Mr. Bean Goes to Town. In the episode, Mr. Bean gives his camera to a man to take a picture of him with a statue. The man then steals the camera, which is, can I just say, classic crime? Like stealing a bag with a $sign on it from a bank. poisoning a rich old husband with green poison from a big vial, just classic crime stuff. Mr. Bean manages to actually catch the criminal in a bin, at which point he starts stabbing him with a pencil. It's that classic longing to do justified reciprocal violence, which isn't at all a worrying part of the human psyche. And look how cathartic it is. Don't we all just wish we could trap those criminals in a bin and stab them with a pencil? What sort of criminals? Don't worry about it. If you say someone is a criminal, you should feel good about stabbing them. And this is where the law comes in. Whilst it is legal to use reasonable force to defend yourself from assault or theft in the UK, and it is legal to perform a citizen's arrest for crimes such as theft, the use of the pencil is where we get dicey. There is no longer a threat at this point of harm or of the robber escaping. Mr. Bean has him very trapped. This is purely violence for the sake of violence. This would also be classed as common assault. If you'd actually managed to break the skin, we'd be in bodily harm territory, and I could nail this pencil-wielding vigilante for 5 years, but the actual damage seems minor. There is definitely intent to cause harm here, and no case of self-defense, so we'll go for 6 months. In episode 11, Back to School, Mr. Bean takes part in a judo class taster session. I don't really know why, because he seems like he really doesn't want to do it. You're an adult, dude. If you don't want to do it, just leave. These people will never see you again, boo. Instead, he jumps the instructor from behind and wraps him in a training mat, which is definitely another common law assault. I know it's a judo class, but there is no judo move that involves wrapping someone in a training mat as far as I'm aware. Sound off in the comments if I'm wrong. That's 6 more months. In episode 12, Tee Off Mr. Bean attacks a woman's shopping bag with a golf club because his golf ball's in there. She definitely views this as threatening behaviour, as she is clearly frightened and is pulled inside by a man who some would call a local hero. The threat of violence is enough for it to be classed as common law assault, which this clearly is. In episode 14, Mr. Bean takes part in a harmless piece of fun, a Hit the Headmaster game, where participants throw wet sponges at the headmaster's head, which is in a little head hole stand thing, like you see on a beach. I'm not googling if this crap has a proper name, I have to draw the line somewhere. But what I can tell you for free is that putting your head in that hit the head teacher hole is not inviting someone to throw full, heavy metal cans of food at your head because the thrower is annoyed they can't hit you. Those things are not light. After that, Mr. Bean goes to hit the man with a chair like some sort of mud show wrestler. Even though none of the cans hit, this is definitely common assault and making the head teacher fear for his life. 6 more months. Now, this is a bit where it gets quite exciting for me, as we get to do a deep dive into a lot of the Mr. Bean media that isn't television episodes and movies, starting with truly one of the most genuinely deranged feeling pieces of Mr. Bean media to me, the bus stop. This is an unreleased scene that was intended to be used in Mr. Bean Rides Again, but was ultimately cut and instead included in the exciting escapades of Mr. Bean VHS tape from 1991. In this short, Mr. Bean tries to stay at the front of a queue for a bus at a bus stop. He does this by trying to lure a mother with her child in a pram into the street, then pushing the pram just willy-nilly down the road. Then he violently shakes the pram. When the baby is crying from the pram shaking annoys him, he then throws gum into the baby's mouth, causing it to instantly stop making any noise, which is bad. If you throw something in a baby's mouth and it stops making noise, that's bad. Then, when a visually impaired man joins the queue, he first shortens the man's cane, confusing him and putting him in danger, and when that doesn't work, he mimics a bus noise to try and lure the man into oncoming traffic. I need you to understand that this scene has no laugh track, and it has this slightly low-quality VHS vibe to it, which combines to make it feel as if Mr. Bean is truly a monster. Despite that, it does make me laugh. It's just laughing with a darker edge of, I can't believe this man would do that. Let's say 3 counts of common law assault, because no one is grievously harmed, 1 each for the mother, baby, and blind man, and let's just all remember that Mr. Bean tried to lure a blind man in front of a bus. Next up, we get to talk about another string of crimes Mr. Bean commits in the comic relief special Blind Date, in which Mr. Bean goes on the British reality show Blind Date, which features Alan Cumming. Look, he's a little baby. He's a romantic Scottish student. That's fun. But don't let it distract you from the crimes. In the first part, which is the picking the blind date portion of the show, Mr. Bean doesn't commit any crimes. He's just weird and rude and standoffish, and he's wasting a hot person's time, which should be a crime, but isn't. Yet. The second half is where things go wrong. The prospective couple win a night at an English country hotel, which plays out like one of those modern horror movies where you're trapped in a social situation you can't escape and the person is going to murder you. Just very Stellan Skarsgård offering Daniel Craig a drink in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo coded. Ignoring the usual Mr. Bean chicanery of spilling wine on her and giving her flowers he's clearly picked straight from the ground, Mr. Bean and his date go fishing, and whilst his date manages to catch a fish, which could be considered cruel but not illegal, Mr. Bean catches a goose. A goose he is holding by its neck as it doesn't move. I don't know if you've ever tried to pick up a goose by the neck before, but usually a lack of struggling means that Mr. Bean killed the goose, which is illegal under the Wildlife and Countryside Act of 1981. And even if that goose is somehow alive, that is taking a wild bird for sure. But I don't think that's particularly likely, and this is another 6 months. After this, they do some archery, and Mr. Bean, after being a sore loser and repeatedly sabotaging his date's attempts to hit the target until she leaves, threatens the cameraman with a bow and arrow. This is punishable by up to 4 years in prison because it's threatening assault with a deadly weapon. I don't care if you were joking, Mr. Bean. The cameraman clearly took it as a threat. After this, Mr. Bean hits his date with a croquet mallet, which is an accident, so I guess we can't say it's a crime. But then, after that, it's revealed that the bellhop at the hotel has been shot in the back with an arrow. I don't know if the implication here is that Mr. Bean caused it when he was intentionally sabotaging his date's shot, or if he just straight up shot this guy in the back with an arrow. Because we don't see exactly how this guy got the arrow in his back, it might be fair to assume that some other patron at the hotel shot him, because it does seem kind of weird that he just kept working this whole time with an arrow in his back. I would, however, like to request an investigation be launched and witnesses be interviewed. This whole nightmare ends with the blind date saying it was the worst weekend of her life, with a tooth missing, and Mr. Bean revealing he has sold his car to propose to her. And the crowd ahs as if the woman wasn't trapped in a straight-up speak no evil situation, made worse by there being people around her, including a whole camera crew who refused to help. I'd also like to talk about the deleted scene armchair sale here. This is a deleted scene from episode 8 where Mr. Bean manipulates an armchair, like one of those electric armchairs, so it bends a woman in half because he wants to buy it and stop them buying it. Just straight up common law assault again, easily. Next up, we have Torval and Bean, another Red Nose Day special where Mr. Bean takes his non-Irma girlfriend to see the famous ice skating duo Torval and Dean. I'm glad Irma got out of there. You are too good for him, girl. And I'm right here if you're looking to rebound with someone who has slightly better social skills, like 10%. Whilst the actual getting on stage and trespassing would be considered a civil matter, leading to Mr. Bean being removed from the property, but no crime, I think it would be hard to argue that his actions here wouldn't be construed as assault, as he throws Jane Torville into a guardrail and slams a door into Christopher Dean's face, knocking him unconscious and breaking his nose. Unconscious long enough for us to be in brain damage territory for sure. And you see the fear in Jane Torville's eyes. She thinks she is going to die. Let's take one charge of common law assault for Jane Torville at 6 months, and an actual bodily harm for Christopher Dean being another 5 years. Next up, we have the 1997 M&M's commercial featuring Mr. Bean. There are actually a few versions of this one in different languages, and the UK version has these, football fans instead of Billy West and J.K. Simmons as the voices of the M&Ms.
Come on, you red.
I feel like I sort of remember these guys' voices from when I was a kid, but it's just goddamn weird. Anyway, Mr. Bean, after being taunted by the red M&M, throws him down a bowling lane. I don't know if this should be counted as a crime against a human. The M&Ms are sentient, they do speak human language, but that's not a person. That's a cartoon M&M, and he does seem to be able to flex his body beyond normal human perception due to his CGI-ness. But equally, he does seem dazed, which would probably imply a concussion and therefore actual bodily harm, so I'm going to say that's 5 years actually. Look at my favourite human person, the red M&M. In our last advert for now, we have the Nissan Tino.
Oh my Tino.
Mr. Bean is trying desperately to get to his Nissan Tino, but it's surrounded by a group of excited admirers because, look at it. It's a Nissan Tino. Wowee, what a car. He sneaks into the sewers to come up through a manhole, and whilst I think the manhole thing would once again fall under trespass as a civil crime bracket, he does shove the lady off the manhole as he comes up, sending her flying.
Back and to the left.
Which definitely falls under common law assault, so this is one more 6-monther for the count. And finally, we're doing a bit of a loop around here because I wanted to save the biggest crime for last. Not so much in terms of sentencing, I don't think this did technically get more than 5 years for actual bodily harm, but in terms of notoriety, this would be the sort of thing that would get the entire country hunting you down, because Mr. Bean headbutts the Queen of England. Remember with the dogs and the colonial wealth and the dogs? They're corgis, look at them. Don't think about the Empire, don't think about it. It's fine. To do this, Mr. Bean commits some level of fraud by pretending to be someone who worked on this film, which is premiering and the Queen is at, and meeting the cast of. By itself, I don't know if this could be persecuted under the Theft Act, because I don't know if we could class meeting the Queen as a service. However, I once again fall back on, I think the court would want to line it up for as much jail time as possible for this one. So maybe we could stretch the definition, because meeting the Queen is definitely like a special thing people would want. And after committing this fraud and spending a long time playing with his fly, just too long playing with his fly, he goes straight for her. Look at that. Look now. Do I know that Mr. Bean was just trying to bow to the Queen and was overly enthusiastic? Yeah, sure. But could I argue that a man with seemingly no family and friends and a long history of antisocial behaviour sneaking into a private event to instantly attack the Queen, the second she is in range, could be interpreted as trying to assassinate the Queen and therefore treason? Also, yes. The fact that Miss Bean gets away with it and isn't ripped apart in 5 seconds by everyone in that room is actually a miracle, but I do not think it would save him for long. Like I say, I understand that this wasn't the intent, but I think there's a strong case here that Mr. Bean intentionally plotted to kill the Queen, and that would be tried as high treason with a maximum sentence of life in prison. Just saying. We'll say it gets set as minimum term of 25 years because of the Queen and the Togs and the blah blah blah. To round this section off, I do want to say there are several moments in this show where, through misunderstandings and general Mr. Bean shenanigans, Mr. Bean flashes people, or peeps at people, or gropes people, or strips people, and generally commits crimes of a sexual nature by mistake. Going into it too much in this video that is ultimately comedic and for fun feels gross, both because it's me making jokes about very real crimes that affect a lot of people, and because it would really minimize them. Just to note, the Red Nose Day shorts, Mr. Bean's wedding and funeral, would go here if I was going to go more in depth. Moving on from the unpleasantness, let's get into part 3. If you're wondering why I hadn't talked about the 1997 movie Bean and the 2007 film Mr. Bean's Holiday, here's why. Because different countries have different laws, you big silly. We're in entirely different legal systems. I have to wing my way through here. From here, my research has come from legislativeinfo.gov for information on the California Penal Code and the servicepublic.gov.fr website for French law. The first time Mr. Bean went abroad, however, wasn't actually in the 1997 Bean movie. It was actually the final episode of the show's original run. Remember way back in the fine section when I talked about Mr. Bean riding a train without a ticket? To avoid that £10 fine, Mr. Bean hides himself in a mailbag and tries to sneak past the ticket gate, but it's picked up and put on a train bound for Moscow. Moscow, Russia, not Moscow, East Ayrshire in Scotland, to be clear. It seems at some point he was loaded onto a boat and taken to Moscow and was not on the train the entire time like I originally misremembered and spent an hour researching for. It's fine, time isn't wasted if you enjoyed what you were doing. So I wasted an hour. Illegal entry into Russia, such as smuggling oneself in a post bag, is punishable by 2 years incarceration. It's also 1 year for France and Germany, 2 years for Poland, and 400 Belarusian rubles for Belarus. Just as random, unrelated facts. Also, yes, like most things created by humans, borders are a social construct, and the idea of human movement being illegal is absurd, and if you haven't figured out by this point, the video is about the law and not my opinion, I don't know what more I can tell you. In the adverts for the Scandinavian budget supermarket Rema 1000, which Mr. Bean was featured in, Mr. Bean empties a tube of toothpaste and a packet of Non-Stop, which seems to be like Smarties, on the floor. If he doesn't pay for those, that could be classed as shoplifting, which seems to carry a fine of, on average, 2,800 Norwegian kroner, which is roughly £221. He also tries to steal this lollipop from a toddler, which, because he gave it to him, I don't think we could count as illegal, but lollipop from a toddler is probably as close as you can get to stealing candy from a baby whilst being like half a step removed. And he failed at it. Just saying. Now we're going to move on to the first of our two major international excursions, 1997's Bean, or Bean, the Ultimate Disaster Movie. This was originally supposed to be produced by 20th Century Fox as an American film, but ended up being not, so it's just a British production. But it still focuses on Mr. Bean going to the United States of America, specifically sunny Los Angeles. Now I know what you're thinking, no one wants to go to America now because of all the fascism, but this was the 90s and the president was Bill Clinton, so everything was probably fine, right? And of course he has to go to America. That's what happens if you're a British TV show and you make a movie, you have to get out of here. And it makes sense because it's depressing here in England. If you aren't going to France, you're going to be big in Japan, or go large, or go to a guest house paradiso, or you become a hostage negotiator, but I think it's for the best Mr. Bean wasn't recruited for that. I think I'll just run through the plot and pick crimes up as we go. Mr. Bean works as a security guard at the National Gallery in London, which just blows so much lore wide open. That's where the boring nerd friends come from. That's how he knows so many people. That's why he was hanging the painting in the hotel, because he loves art. That's why fierce Queen Irma Gob puts up with him. She's probably a super cool art thief who's using him to do a heist. And I will say, we first see Mr. Bean sleeping on the job, which is actually kind of baller. This is the most I've respected Mr. Bean this entire video. We find out that Mr. Bean gets to keep his job despite the sleeping and the general incompetence because the head of the gallery is fond of him, which explains how he can afford anything. The board hate him, however, which seems like a very minor detail for the board to be worried about. As far as I can tell, boards usually spend their time jerking each other off and having money fights. Yes, I know that's crude. Money fights? How much more cartoonishly evil rich can you get? Also, guess who's on the board? It's the 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi! He's one of the evil Richies! That's the best Doctor, and he's an evil Richie. They decide to get rid of Mr. Bean by sending him to America, where he will serve as their representative for the unveiling of the painting Whistler's Mother by James McNeill Whistler. Gah, these Napo mothers are out of control. They misrepresent him as Dr. Bean, which feels illegal on the part of the gallery, but that's outside the purview of this video.
Dr. Bean will give the occasion depth and dignity.
He's going to stay with the curator of the Griefs and Art Gallery in California, David Langley. I just want to take a moment here to say the bromance between Mr. Bean and David Langley is genuinely beautiful, and I really liked it. This is generally considered a mediocre to bad movie, which is fair, and I think a lot of that is that, unlike the show, there's a lot of dialogue and American-style humor, and people saying people look like Meatloaf's butt.
So he's gonna look like Meatloaf's butt.
And look, one of the coolest things I ever did as a very uncool person was get a standing ovation at a Rocky Horror Picture Show screening by standing up and playing a blow-up saxophone during Hot Patootie. So that's personal for me. But I do think their relationship is a high point. Playing Mr. Bean's whole shtick against this anxious American and turning Mr. Bean into a drop-dead Fred-esque life changer brings some really fun moments that I think make this film something. They are genuinely quite sweet together, and it's nice seeing Mr. Bean have a friend. We don't need to talk about what happened in that shower. That was just accidental, naked roughhousing, and they aren't gay, and they aren't banging, and I don't ship them, I swear. Back to the crimes. On the flight over, Mr. Bean attempts to cheer up a sick child by blowing up a bath bag and popping it to wake up a sleeping businessman who is the headmaster of the school from Gilmore Girls, but the bath bag is full of sick, covering the businessman in sick, and I don't think this is illegal. It's clearly an accident, and this may be the most conservative thing I ever say, but I don't like the idea of living in a world where someone could do that to me and just get away with it. I think he should go to jail or at least be spanked by a police officer or something, because that is nasty. But as of yet, I think because it's an accident, he'd get away with it. Afterwards, however, when disembarking the plane, Mr. Bean pretends to have a gun in an airport. This is maybe the most pre-9/11 thing I have ever seen, genuinely. I do not believe he would have survived this situation any time post-2001. He then makes it worse by running away from the police after they tell him to stop. Now he's just abusing his white privilege. This seems like it would fall under imparting or conveying false information bomb hoax, 18 USC 35, which covers making false bomb or attack threats in the States. This could lead to a $5,000 fine or 5 years imprisonment. Though I think as this is, in the grand scheme of things, minor, we could probably just go for the $5,000. And then a year in county jail for resisting arrest under Penal Code 1481A, because it's after doing that whole gun threat thing. What a great start for Mr. Bean's time in America. After this, Mr. Bean embarrasses himself in front of the board of the gallery and David's family before convincing David to take him to an amusement park. Here, Mr. Bean sabotages an amusement park ride, causing it to move so violently it is literally throwing people out of their seats while he sits there looking like a true sicko. And this man does not enjoy all the wrestling, I will tell you that. I would say there are a few different crimes here, primarily California Penal Code Section 594 vandalism, as this was very likely to cause more than $400 of damage, so carries another year in county jail. But there are children on that ride, and won't somebody, for once, please think of the children? Because I did. And under Penal Code Section 273A, any person who, under circumstances or conditions likely to produce great bodily harm or death, willfully causes or permits any child to suffer shall, yada yada yada, be punished by imprisonment in a county jail not exceeding 1 year. Throw that on the counter, baby, because there is no way this is not likely to produce great bodily harm to all those kiddies enjoying the show. A sick, sick man. This brings us to the big crime of this film, one that causes probably 10 crimes. Whilst viewing Whistler's Mother, Mr. Bean sneezes on the painting. Obviously, should not have been that close to the painting. Should not have been touching it. Bad. But not illegal. He then tries to clean it up, which first leads to him covering it in ink, and then using liqueur thinner to try and clean it off, destroying the painting completely. Look, I think the sneeze is legally fine. I think the ink would even be acceptable in a mistakes happen, we're pissed, but legally we're in the clear thing. But this vandalism, surely, another year. Also, I find it funny that this is the exact situation Mr. Bean was in the library short from 1991. The man has learned nothing in the 6 years between these two events. They also included an extra scene in the American release of this film that was just a recreation of the famous turkey on the head bit from Merry Christmas, Mr. Bean, that was also ripped off in Friends. America just really loves reheating Mr. Bean's nachos, I guess. Realizing he has ruined his friend David's life, Mr. Bean decides to steal the painting of Whistler's Mother. This is a major federal crime under US Code 668, theft of a major artwork, which is punishable by up to 10 years in prison. There's no way around this one. He defaced a major work of art and then stole it, replacing it with a cheap print aged up with nail varnish. To commit this theft, he also committed second-degree burglary under California Penal Code 459, which can be punished up to 3 years in jail if prosecuted as a felony, which it most likely would be in a case where the defendant has previous charges like stealing a Christmas tree and post and all that jewelry. This would be in a state prison, which is different to county jail, I guess. Yeah. He also once again commits poisoning by putting just so much laxative in the security guard's coffee, which I would say would be more than enough to be considered an overdose, which can cause a lot of pain and also more serious consequences, such as dangerous levels of dehydration. And that's not even including if this guy has any pre-existing medical conditions that make pooping his entire body out of his ass even more dangerous. So that would be another 5 years in state prison. Yes, this one nighttime excursion has netted Mr. Bean 13 years in state prison. After this, Mr. Bean and David attend the reveal of the artwork, and I think this is a good time to talk about the fraud. Mr. Bean is not a professor of art history. He is not a doctor. He is in no way qualified to give a speech on a historically important painting or probably anything. Interestingly, though, I don't think this one would stick. Mr. Bean is basically a victim of mistaken identity. He at no point wants to commit fraud, and he isn't really gaining any tactile benefit other than getting to spend time in California with his sexy side piece David. With David. But that's what his bosses wanted him to do. And I don't know, aren't doctorates just sort of ways to gatekeep and commodify knowledge and art? He gives a good speech that everyone is touched by, and they all clap, and I think it's not fraud. I think because they clap, it's not fraud. I was really ready to get him on the fraud, but I don't think it would hold up. Anyway, that's the end of the film. Guess it's time to... I'm just checking my notes here. There are 20 minutes left. This is where the movie falls apart to me. Mr. Bean doing the breaking and entering and saving David's career is such an obvious high point emotionally and in terms of action, and having this weirdly dramatic third act turn where David's daughter was in a bike crash and she's in a hospital and the family are all sad feels very forced. This is where it really stops feeling like Mr. Bean to me. There are suddenly stakes, someone could die, it's just messy. It's poorly laid out and such bad pacing after what feels like the ending. It's like this entirely tacked on extra bit. But luckily, I've cleared Mr. Bean of the fraud, so I don't think there's really anything to talk about in this section of the, oh my god, he's doing surgery! Okay, so this kind of starts as the same thing where Mr. Bean is mistaken for a medical doctor, but this time, despite the initial case of mistaken identity, he then proceeds to actually attempt to practice medicine without a license by trying to treat David's daughter, I assume as a sign of love, and pretending to do a surgery after he drops an M&M into a man's open chest wound, and eating the M&M after he has retrieved it, which is just wrong. Also, I just want to take a moment here to say that this film is so sponsored by M&Ms, perhaps the most sponsored by any product a movie has ever been. And as someone who usually accepts product placement in films as a necessary evil, or at least looks away and blocks it out, this was a film that went too far. He eats the M&M out of the man's body. It's not that good, Mr. Bean. I really hate that this makes Mr. Bean a sellout, to be honest. Like, I can excuse medical malpractice, but I draw the line at being a sellout, man. Oh, yeah, this falls under Business and Professions Code 2052 BPC, practicing medicine without a certificate, and could be charged as a misdemeanor with up to 1 year jail time. But I do think the eating the M&M thing is worse. But having saved David's daughter in what I think is a halfway fridging, but the female character didn't die, but she did get seriously injured to push the men's story forward. Maybe that's still fridging. After the half fridging, Mr. Bean gets to stay with family a bit longer. He dresses like a child for a minute, gives them all bad gifts, and he and David drive around LA, presumably going to a musical or bottomless brunch. Because they're gay. Everyone's happy, the end. Oh, and Mr. Bean transported that stolen painting to another country. I can't find a crime that specifically covers this, but come on, that's not good. Our second and final feature film so far is Mr. Bean's Holiday, which was released in 2007 and features Mr. Bean going to France on holiday. I think overall this is a more successful Mr. Bean film. There's more dialogue than the show, but far less than Bean, and it feels a lot simpler. There are a lot less jokes based on the dialogue and a lot more on physical slapstick bits and bits based around Mr. Bean's personality. I think it drags a bit even at 90 minutes, but it's a fun enough time. And I am so excited to try and find a bunch of French laws that are in French, which I don't speak, to find how boned Mr. Bean is in French. Apparently boned is boned in French. Les boned? So we start with Mr. Bean winning a raffle for a holiday to France and embarking on the first leg of his holiday over the credits. Mr. Bean reaches Paris and in trying to get from one train station to another commits the crime of jaywalking. Is jaywalking a crime invented by insurance companies to move the blame for automotive accidents away from the drivers and therefore save themselves money? Yes. But it is a crime and the fine is €4, which I do think is very serious. After this, Mr. Bean misses his train in Gare de Lyon by getting his tie stuck in a vending machine, so decides to have some lunch at a fancy French train station restaurant. And can I just ask, what is with Mr. Bean's taste for fine dining? Am I going back to the alien theory? Is he just trying to pretend to be human and in his mind part of that is going to fancy restaurants? Or is it something more? Anyway, this scene starts to get really gross when Mr. Bean accidentally orders oysters, which he doesn't want, and then tries to get rid of them, and I'm sorry, but this genuinely turns my stomach to the point I can't watch. I assume he's not doing anything illegal here, like dumping them into a lady's handbag, or destroying her property and any money she had in there. I assume, because if he did, that would be illegal as vandalism in France, which is chargeable by €1,500 fine. He also didn't pay for the meal, which is theft, and I'm going to assume of a quite high amount, because this is a fancy restaurant inside a train station. There's actually a crime for this in France, filatry, which is chargeable by up to 6 months imprisonment and €7,500 fine. Mr. Bean is currently at €9,004, which will be increasing by another €50 as he rides the next train without a ticket. So I guess I should talk about the kidnapping. At this point, Mr. Bean has come into possession of a child through a series of classic Mr. Bean escapades, and the film becomes about the two of them trying to reunite the child with his father. A large part of this film is that France is hunting Mr. Bean as a kidnapper. Obviously, this is a crime. However, what I will say is, spoilers, Mr. Bean gets off for the crime. I don't think I can include crimes that Mr. Bean is let off for in the narrative because clearly justice has already prevailed. He was on the run unknowingly for a while, but it's clearly shown that he returns the child and everyone's fine with it, and there are no legal repercussions. Am I better than the French police? Probably, but that's not the point. So Mr. Bean and the boy have been thrown off the train and are now trying to scrape money together by panhandling at the train station. Fun fact, panhandling is legal in France except under specific municipal decrees and if you are doing it in a train station. Now, do I think this is just criminalizing being unhoused and being poor and it's just an incredibly lame law made by what I can only assume to be a loser? Yes, but it is a law and that's another €750 fine. I think he'd escape the law that specifically covers making children panhandle for you because it's only if the child is under the age of 6, and I think this kid is older. They are ejected from the station and they decide to make money by busking, which is fine because it does not require any specific licensing in France. But in doing so, he does steal a speaker and a woman's cardigan, and we don't see him returning either of these things, which we are going to class as a single theft each, which is 3 years in prison and a €45,000 fine each. And after they successfully make money from their impromptu opera performance, he loses his bus ticket and steals a bike in his attempt to get the ticket back, which is a third charge of theft. He follows the chicken, which has his coach ticket stuck to its foot, into a little chicken coop, which feels like it should be classed as breaking and entering, but because he just walked in through an unlocked door, which doesn't seem to fall under the idea of maneuvers that the French law requires, and it's not a domicile, I think he's fine. But on the way he did hold onto a car to build up speed, which would be towing and a €35 fine. He also tries to steal a second bike, which was like a motorized bike. It has what looks like a petrol engine on it, but it goes slower than a regular bike. It looks like a chill way to live, though. Anyway, Mr. Bean, with a devious look of criminal intent, tries to steal the bike, but it's so slow he gets stopped by the guy. I don't think I can actually try this because he doesn't manage to steal it, and the guy certainly doesn't seem to be threatened or aggrieved, but just look at that face when he realizes he's in a position to do a crime. I feel like listing all these crimes as being pointless because there is no greater proof that Mr. Bean is a criminal than the face he makes when he realizes he can do a crime. That's not a man who's a criminal of necessity. I genuinely believe he just loves crime. After this, he needs to take a massive dump, I guess, so he goes to an outhouse, which I don't know if this is a public outhouse or it's just like an outhouse that belongs to somebody, but why would someone put their private outhouse on the side of the road? Either way, no breaking, no crime. What happens next is kind of interesting because Mr. Bean realizes he's trapped inside the outhouse and lifts it up to escape before walking into the road, where it's destroyed. I would love to cry vandalism here, but surely if you get trapped somewhere, you can break yourself out. Like, surely that's fine, legally. I can't find anything that says that though, so it's a €1,500 fine. Mr. Bean then falls asleep under a cart and he thinks he wakes up in World War II. Like, he thinks he's time traveled for a second, which is clearly outside the realm of what could happen to any human being. Well, anyway, he thinks a lady is going to be run over by a Nazi tank, which I guess felt less likely in 2007 than it does now in a sort of general sense, so he tackles her. I thought, boom, assault, easy jail time for Mr. Bean. But France goes a step beyond the Good Samaritan law we talked about with saving people in the UK. In France, it would actually be illegal to believe someone is in danger and not try to help. He could have actually faced 5 years in prison and a hefty fine for not tackling her, so it's chill. But yeah, he didn't time travel, he's on the set of an advert that's being filmed. Normal stuff happens, he gets way too into being dressed as a Nazi, sort of inadvertently causes the director to blow himself up. Nothing crime-worthy before he heads off. Mr. Bean teams up with the woman he tackled, Sabine, who I do really love. She's kind of unhinged in the best way. She doesn't care at all that Mr. Bean is on the run for kidnapping. All she really cares about is getting to her movie premiere that she has one scene in, and she pretty much instantly matches Mr. Bean's freak. It's fun to give Mr. Bean a partner character, even though they all only really teamed up for a pretty small section of the movie. Mr. Bean gets reunited with the kid, they keep trying to call the kid's parents, and this happens. Content warning for unaliving, I guess?
Estelle, dis-moi que tu m'aimes, ou c'est fini.
So this isn't a crime as far as I can tell, it's just a surprising thing to see in a Mr. Bean movie, and I thought it couldn't go unmentioned. But I don't really have anything to say about it. Our big final set piece sees Mr. Bean, Sabine, and the kid break into the premiere of Willem Dafoe's movie where the kid's dad is. They do this by smuggling Mr. Bean and the kid into the premiere in drag, which is once again painful to me and feels targeted, but let's put that aside. Sabine claims they are her mother and daughter to police, which I think would best be described as concealing a criminal under French law. So that's 3 years imprisonment and a €45,000 fine for Sabine, but Mr. Bean is safe here. Once inside the cinema, which once again I think is fine in terms of French trespass laws, seem primarily focused on breaking and entering when it comes to a domicile and not for corporate and public owned buildings, Mr. Bean does straight up assault a guy with his purse. Oh, assault charges. It's been too long. Now, I would usually say this was pretty minor. All Mr. Bean did was hit him with a purse, except that guy is unconscious. Out. As I'm sure we all know, because nerds on the internet love to tell us, getting knocked out for a long period of time is dangerous. Not like in the movies. And today, I am one of those nerds, because if you're unconscious for any length of time, that is considered a red flag for a concussion, which can be a life-changing injury. This could cause brain damage. In France, assault charges are based on how long the victim is unable to work, which is another messed up law, by the way. And because concussions have such a wide variety of incapacitation times, it would be hard to figure out exactly on the scale where Mr. Bean would fit. Luckily for me, there's a list of aggravating circumstances that would make it max 7 years in prison and a €100,000 fine. And one of those aggravating circumstances is committing the act in the presence of a child. And who is that right there? A child. Consider these circumstances aggravated. After this, Mr. Bean accidentally sabotages Willem Dafoe's film by splicing it with his own footage of the trip, which I would class as vandalism, but because the crowd loves it, Willem Dafoe doesn't seem like he wants to press charges, so I think we'll drop it. The kid is reunited with his parents, who were attending the film premiere at Cannes as judges, despite their kid being seemingly kidnapped, which is dedication to art, I guess. Sabine is now being interviewed, and it seems like this will now give her acting career a boost. Willem Dafoe is passing the film off as intentional in his own new, most popular work of art, and Mr. Bean finally gets to go to the beach by walking across the roofs of a bunch of cars. This isn't really illegal in the sense that it's not illegal to walk on top of a car when it's not moving, I guess, but Mr. Bean would be liable for any damage he causes. I don't see any denting or scuffing, so I guess I will let him off and just enjoy the kind of lovely ending of this film where the cast and a large crowd sing The Mayor by Charles Trenet. On his way down, he also steps on this guy, but honestly, who wouldn't want Mr. Bean to step on you? Like I said, this film isn't perfect, but it is really charming, and I really genuinely enjoyed my 2 watches of the film for this video. The ending feels like such a lovely wrap-up of Mr. Bean, seeing him successfully be accepted by some other weirdos and complete a goal. It warmed my heart, despite having to witness all the crimes Mr. Bean committed, which I did find deeply disturbing. That pretty much wraps everything up when it comes to Les Crimes Internationaux, except this Snickers advert from 2014, I guess, where Mr. Bean and a bunch of martial artists are jumping across rooftops in ancient China times, and he knocks a bunch of tiles off before crashing through this roof by mistake. If I were to guess, this would probably fall under the purview of the Great Qing Legal Code, which was the legal code of the Qing dynasty from 1644 to 1912. I can't find this online, though I think I could buy the physical book to find out how many lashings with a bamboo cane Mr. Bean will receive, and though I would love to do that, I don't need to, because when Mr. Bean eats a Snickers, we see is actually another martial artist who was hungry. Classic Snickers adverts, you're not you when you're hungry, get some nuts, etc. Except, what does this say about Mr. Bean? I've questioned the consistency of Mr. Bean a few times here, how he seems to move from apartment to apartment, have new social groups. At the beginning of the video, I dismissed Mr. Bean being an alien because I actually have a different theory. In Jason Goes to Hell the final Friday, Jason Voorhees becomes a demonic entity that infects and controls people, and my pitch to you is, much like that hockey-masked murderer, Mr. Bean is a spirit. A chaotic infection, a trickster god who finds people when they are weak and hungry and overtakes them, causing them to do things beyond what a normal human being would do. Destroying property, harming other people, ruining their lives. A spirit of incompetence. I think we should just think about it. That's all. Just to start this conclusion off, I want to shout out the pieces of Mr. Bean media where he doesn't commit any crimes. These are as follows. The deleted scenes Turkey Weight, marching, and playing with matches. The Red Nose Day sketch Police Station. The commercials for Polygram Filmed Entertainment and Fujifilm 2000. Though betraying his country by sporting Italy during the Euros feels close. And the YouTube special, Beans Gets Diamond Play Button 10 million Fans Special Guest Colin Ferrers. Yes, that is the video title. So, good job on not committing any crimes there, Mr. Bean. I would also like to say that the Mr. Bean YouTube channel is great. It has each episode posted multiple times of both the live action and animated shows, along with loads of clips with frankly hilarious thumbnails and clickbait titles. Just real art there. It's also a great resource for deleted scenes and Red Nose Day specials. Even Mr. Bean's Holiday is on there for free, and sometimes there are Johnny English clips. It's genuinely very cool to make this stuff accessible without a streaming service, and I want to give whoever's maintaining it props. This video was really fun to make, despite it involving a lot of me researching crimes and trying to figure out what is a crime, and just ruining my search history forever with, like, is it illegal to defibrillate a guy with electricity from a lamppost? I genuinely would love people to correct any mistakes I made or point out any potential crimes I missed. I tried my best, but this can't be perfect. I tried to explain my reasoning when I didn't include things, but as you can see by the runtime, there's a lot to talk about. I've also grown to really appreciate Mr. Bean as like a show and a British institution, I guess. I had seen bits and pieces of Mr. Bean growing up, but I realised watching through for this that there was a lot of Mr. Bean that I hadn't seen, and a lot of it is really funny. Funnier than I expected, I think. British comedy from the 90s is very hit or miss for me, but there is a real magic to Mr. Bean that won me over a lot. There's a simplicity to the bits that really holds up. It's quite laser-focused. Mr. Bean wants something or wants to avoid something, and keeps making the situation worse and worse until he eventually gets punished or causes complete chaos. It's formulaic, but the formula works. When I started this, I wanted to talk about the concept of comedic sociopathy, how most comedies feature characters who do awful things on a regular basis for humorous purposes. I think I've established that pretty well, but it made me think a lot about why. According to a lot of very funny people, comedy comes from subversion, leading the audience to one conclusion and then pulling the rug out from under them. I think what Mr. Bean really highlights is that the subversion can come from a different place. It can come from our cultural norms. When Mr. Bean does things that are outside of the norm, he's comically challenging our views of how things are done, how we are supposed to react to a social situation. When he finds unconventional ways out of or around problems, the comedy comes from the unexpected solutions and its slapstick consequences. I guess the point I've come to is that Mr. Bean commits so many crimes because you would expect a mild-mannered Bean Man to abide by the law. And it's funny that instead he has no respect for it. But that doesn't matter, because the real conclusion to this video is how badly are we going to be punishing Mr. Bean? So I've done the maths, and here we go. Drumroll please. Mr. Bean's fines in total would be £225,594.50, basing the fines on the currency conversion on the date of writing, the 28th of April. It will be a bit hard for Mr. Bean to pay these, however, as he will be spending 145 years in prison. To be clear, that is the time from today, 2026, to 1881. The Ottoman Empire was still around in 1881. But instead of serving jail time until 2171, Mr. Bean lives on in our hearts as a charming piece of British culture, a character that is funny and weird, and they made a cartoon of him, and Rowan Atkinson keeps trying to cash on his success by fighting babies, and it's great. I guess ultimately my point is that I forgive you, Mr. Bean, for doing all those crimes. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Why don't you tell me your favourite crime? Or your favourite time a fictional character committed a crime and it was treated as a joke. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm MJaded. I'll see you all soon.